In the harbor of New York City, the Statue of Liberty stands as one of the most important emblems of the US immigrant identity. Indeed, on the bottom part of the statue's pedestal, you can find a bronze plaque with a poem by Emma Lazarus entitled The New Colossus and written in 1883. The words of this sonnet have been a welcome message to the millions of immigrants who made it to the US. The goal was to show that America was hospitable and inclusive. So let's read the poem. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. In August 2019, the Trump administration decided that it was time to change the famous line of the poem. The director of the US Citizenship and Immigration Services proposed to replace "your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free" by "your poor, who can stand on their own 2 feet and will not become a public charge." So the director of the US Citizen and Immigration Services explained that the poem applied to European immigrants in the past, but that now America was looking to receive migrants who were not dependent on the country. So this proposal, which could appear as a joke, rejects the universal message of hope inscribed in the poem by Lazarus, and it illustrates the Trump administration's desire to make it harder for migrants to be awarded permanent residence or the green card if they have ever accepted benefit programs such as food stamp or housing assistance. So the immigration policies of the Trump administration are indeed targeting a reduction of the number of legal and illegal immigrants in order to protect the US. So President Trump's immigration policies are centered around the following areas. First, curbing or limiting legal immigration and diminishing the number of asylum seekers. 2. Completing the border wall with Mexico. 3. Deporting immigrants who arrived in the United States as children and are currently protected under the DACA program. So DACA stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. So it seems that Trump would like to open the gates of America only to immigrants who are and were financially sufficient, educated, highly skilled, and immigrants who speak English. So let's see the different aspects of his policy to transform immigration in America. This lecture will be threefold. First, we'll discuss the issue of the border wall, then the Dreamers and the DACA program, and finally how Trump would like to set a selective immigration system. So let's have a look at the issue of the border wall. So the border between the US and Mexico is 3,000 kilometers long. The barrier is located on both urban and inhabited section of the border, namely in areas where the most concentrated numbers of illegal crossing and drug trafficking have been observed in the past. So these urban areas include San Diego in California, El Paso in Texas, and also, for example, the border town of Nogales in Arizona in the United States, and Nogales Serrana in Mexico, a town which is divided by the wall. So the construction of the border wall started in 1990 when President Bush Sr. approved the initial 20 kilometers of fencing along the San Diego-Tijuana border, as you can see on the map. So it's completely on the left. So first it started with 20 kilometers of fencing along the San Diego and Tijuana border. Further barriers were built from 1994 under the presidency of Clinton as part of operations to counter the transportation of illegal drugs and to limit immigration. So before 2006, there were only 120 kilometers of fencing along this very long border. So only 120 kilometers of fencing before 2006. But the Secure Fence Act of 2006, a new law carried by George W. Bush, authorized and partly financed the construction of 1,125 kilometers of physical fences, physical barriers along the Mexican border. So the intensification of the construction of the fence started after 2006 under the Bush administration. And it was continued by President Obama. So in 2011, Obama stated that the wall was basically complete with 1,044 kilometers of barrier constructed, and that his administration would stop the expansion of the wall. So Obama wanted to stop the expansion of the wall because it was already 1,044 kilometers long. So here on that slide, you can see the town divided in two. One part is Mexican, the other part is American. And now let's discuss Trump wall. So when he was running for president, Donald Trump promised that he would lead the construction of a much larger and more solid border wall. New portions would be added, and a part of the old barrier would be replaced by a new wall. He said, "I will build a great wall on the southern border, and I will make Mexico pay for that wall. Mark my words." So the goal of this extension of the wall would be to prevent people from entering the US illegally. And Trump believes the existing barriers are not enough to stop people attempting to cross. So he wants to build more. In a televised speech, he stated, "All Americans are hurt by uncontrolled illegal immigration. We are out of space to hold them, and we have no way to promptly return them back home to their country." In many speeches, President Trump makes border security an urgent national crisis. So border security is an urgent national crisis. And he keeps calling undocumented immigrants criminal illegal aliens in order to convince the American people of a strong and imminent danger. During the 2016 presidential campaign, he presented Mexican immigration as a real threat for the American population. He said, "When Mexico is sending its people, they are not sending the best. They are bringing drugs, they are bringing crimes, they are rapists, and some, I assume, are good people." On Twitter, he declared before his hostility for the neighboring country. He said, "I love the Mexican people, but Mexico is not your friend. They are killing us at the border. They are killing us on jobs and trade. Fight!" So it was a tweet from 2015. So as the Mexican government is definitely not going to pay for the Trump wall, in December 2018, President Trump asked the Congress to provide 1.7 billion in wall funding. So he wanted the US to pay for the wall and asked Congress for 5.7 billion in funding. Well, instead, Congress offered only 1.3 billion to continue the current border security funding. And as a result, 9 federal government departments shut down for 35 days because no agreement could be found between Congress and the president. So the government was forced to partially close due to this political crisis related to the war. Indeed, many members of the Democratic Party disagree with the wall because they say that it gives a completely wrong image of immigration, and the wall for them appeals to fear and anxiety. They consider the wall as a symbol of division, not of unity. And also in 2018, there were scandals related to the inhumane detention condition of immigrants trying to cross the border. These inhumane detention conditions were denounced after 7 immigrant children who died in border detention centers. Well, I want you to have just a quick look at some artistic installations made on the border wall. A famous installation by street artist JR with French, and one with a child overlooking the fence, so a giant picture of a child set on the Mexican side of the wall, and another one with eyes overlapping the two sides of the wall. Another project was the installation of pink seesaws next to El Paso, and you can see children and adults playing on both sides of the wall. So the goal was to show that no matter which side you belong to, people are very similar. There are no differences between people. If they're American or Mexican, they have the same games, they have the same activities, and they can share without restraints. Let's discuss the issue of DACA. So we are going to explain what are the Dreamers and what is DACA. So in 2001, the DREAM Act, so the DREAM Act, DREAM is the acronym for Development, Relief, and Education for Alien Minors. So the DREAM Act was introduced in 2001. And this bill, which has not been validated and is still debated, would provide a permanent residence to immigrants of good moral who graduated from high school, actually, so permanent residency would be given to young immigrants who arrived to the US illegally when they were minors. So the undocumented immigrants who entered the US before their 18th birthday are known as the Dreamers, and they represent a group of 3.6 million people. So 3.6 million people for the Dreamers. So the Dreamers are protected by the DACA program, and DACA means Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, and we already mentioned it a little. So DACA is a federal government program which was created in 2012 under Barack Obama. It allows people brought to the US illegally as children to have the temporary right to live, study, and work in America. So those applying for this protection program should not have any criminal history, and they must be students or have completed school or military service. So they must have arrived in the US before turning 16, and they must have lived in America continuously since June 2007. So no criminal history, being a student, having completed school or military service, having arrived before turning 16, and living continuously in the US since June 2007. So, thanks to DACA, they cannot be deported and they become eligible for basic rights or basics like a driving license, college enrollment, a work permit. So they cannot be deported and they are eligible for learning how to drive, getting enrolled at university, or getting a work permit. The program does not provide a path to citizenship, but it allows qualifying undocumented immigrants to live and work legally in the US. And about 800,000 people have received DACA protections over the 5 years of the program. So about 800,000 people have received DACA protection. So most dreamers are from Mexico, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and the largest numbers live in California, Texas, Florida, New York. Now, a very quick look at the scheme explaining DACA. So, who are the people eligible? How does it work? So, I want you to take time to take a closer look at this slide because it's important and it shows you the protection and rights which are given to the applicants. Now we are going to discuss the rescind of DACA by the Trump administration. On September 5th, 2017, the Trump administration announced that the program was being repealed and it presented individuals protected by DACA as lawbreakers who impacted the wages and employment of native-born Americans. So on September 2017, a repeal of the DACA program. During his campaign, Trump had already attacked DACA by calling the program an illegal amnesty. What was complicated was that the president announced the end of DACA, but he first left it to the American Congress to find a solution to replace the program and deal with the Dreamers. So several federal judges have opposed the decision of the Trump administration and they started fighting for the full restoration of DACA. So federal judges started a fight for the full restoration of DACA. And finally, in January 2018, Trump released a proposed immigration plan to replace DACA. So in his proposal, he said that a 12-year path to citizenship would be offered to the 1.8 million of immigrants who arrived in the US illegally as children. So instead of the DACA program, the Trump administration wants to offer a 12-year path to citizenship for the immigrants who arrived to the US as children. And he also offered to protect the Dreamers for 3 years in exchange for border wall funding. So it's a kind of blackmail saying there will be DACA there will be a protection for the Dreamers if you give me money for the border wall. So the Democrats rejected the proposal because this protection for the Dreamers is not permanent. So people who have enrolled in the DACA program now live in a constant fear of being arrested and deported because the US government knows where they and their family live and can come and take them at any moment. So the problem is that overnight they can lose everything they have, their careers, their home, their family life, and some of them can be sent to a country they don't know. So many dreamers describe their current situation as an American nightmare because their life could stop at any moment and they don't know what will happen to them. Finally, we are moving on to the last part of the lecture with the idea of selective immigration, so merit-based immigration. So in May 2019, Donald Trump presented his new immigration plan. So he wants to shift the focus of the US immigration system from family reunion to a merit system. So for him, this new plan would promote integration, assimilation, and national unity. So he says that it is problematic that 66% of legal immigrants are admitted to the US just because they have a relative, a family or friends in the country. And also he says that it's quite a problem that 21% can make it to the US thanks to the green card lottery or because they are asylum seekers. So he's against what he calls the principle of random selection. And for him, this random selection is contrary to American values and blocks out many qualified potential immigrants from around the world who would have much to contribute. So instead of a random selection, instead of family reunion, the green card lottery, he would like to welcome qualified potential immigrants who could contribute to making America great again. So, in other words, he wants an immigration based on merit and talent. So, under his new system, Trump says that immigrants would be rated by their age, English proficiency, level of education, and offers of employment. So, the new system would favor the age, the fluency in English, the level of education, and the offers of employment. And it would also increase visas for those with particular skills. So in the new system, 57% of skilled immigrants would be welcomed. Well, some family links would be maintained, but a priority would be given to immediate family, only spouse and children. So Trump's immigration policy is presented as a way to support American economy and protect the job of American people. I'm going to read the quote that you can find on the screen. We are proposing an American immigration plan which put the jobs, ways, and safety of American workers first. Our proposal is pro-American, pro-immigrant, and pro-worker. It's just common sense. It will help all of our people, including millions of devoted immigrants, to achieve the American dreams. So the idea of a skill-based immigration was already introduced in 1990 with the notion of preference system, and Trump is reintroducing that idea of a preference system. Finally, immigrants should not be public charges under the Trump administration. So the immigration plan is also about earning the right to live in the US and proving that immigrants want to contribute to national prosperity. So in June 2017, Trump asked Congress to prevent all immigrants from receiving welfare and assistance programs for the first 5 years in the country. So the goal of the administration is to make sure that new immigrants are not going to become public charges. Also in August 2019, the Trump administration set very strict standards for green card applicants. So these standards seek to limit those who use or may need public benefits. Public benefits like Medicaid, food stamps, housing aid. So it favors immigrants with high incomes and private health insurance. So the White House issued a proclamation saying that immigrants should not be a burden for the American healthcare system, and that visas would be denied to immigrants who would be a burden for this healthcare system. So foreigners will have to prove that they have an insurance and that they are rich enough to cover for their own healthcare costs before entering the US. So for Trump and his administration, the goal is to protect the availability of healthcare benefits for Americans. So this immigration plan is not supported by the American Congress. The Democratic majority in the House of Representatives is very skeptical regarding the immigration proposal of Trump. And the Senate, even with its Republican majority, is not in favor of this plan either. So many Democrats indeed blame the latest immigration plan for not finding any solution for the dreamers. And this will be the final words of this lecture. Thank you.